Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining us. As you saw, possibly if you paid attention to my channel last week, I did my very first series and episode called a 10 Talk. And today we would like to continue that 10 Talk with a new guest. And I'm so excited to introduce this individual. She's become a great friend of mine as well. And you know, she's someone that I cannot wait to hear a little bit more about her background. So with that, we're gonna dive in, and I wanna go ahead and introduce my good friend, Maly. Maly, how are you today?
Good, Tony. I'm excited being on your show.
Yes, it's an honor to have you, and I really appreciate your time. And, you know, out of respect for everyone, we're just gonna kind of dive into it. So to start, I would love to have everyone hear a little bit about your background and how you came to kind of where you are in life in your career today. So if you could spend a couple minutes on that, that'd be wonderful.
Oh my goodness, just a couple of minutes, huh? Tony, this is not doing any service. But anyway, I'll try to, let's see, I originally came from Fresno. I grew up in Fresno. This is, I arrived in the late 80s, went to school there. Fresno State alumni, you know, and growing up in Fresno, as many of us know, it was not a walk in the park, okay, in Fresno. Anyway, despite all of that, I was able to obtain a master's degree in criminology. I set out because I wanted to become a defense attorney, actually, but I didn't make it to law school. After my master's degree, I moved to the Bay Area, you know, worked in nonprofit organizations, and eventually became a deputy probation officer for Contra Costa County. Stayed there as a PO for about 12 years. I retired early from the department. And in the between time, you know, I tap into different things in business, in doing community advocacy for the last 20 years. Currently at the moment, even though I've retired, I became a registered court interpreter for both Lao and Thai language at the moment. So that's 2 minutes.
All right.
Highlight.
Well, you know, I obviously would love to have you back when we have more time, but you know, I think that is very impressive. I mean, your educational background, I know for me, I mentioned it in my last video, just even the first step of making it through undergrad is a huge accomplishment. And I can see where you get your intelligence from, you know, getting a master's degree and you know, the type of work
you know, having a higher education definitely helped, but I think life experience and the things that you've gone through in your life and the different kind of field, different kind of things that you participated in all add into the richness of your experience, right? I mean, when I went to school, I was a single mom. So there was a lot of hustling, a lot of obstacle, a lot happened that, you know, that I think add to who I am today. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you know, speaking of what you do now as a certified interpreter, I think most people don't really understand the difference, if there is one, between an interpreter versus a translator. So I think that, maybe you can kind of shed some light on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely a thing that we've tried to explain to people. So translation is when you actually translate documents, say translating a document from a source language into a target language. And in our case, our target language is Lao and vice versa. So we may be translating an English document into Lao or a Lao document into English. And interpreting is when we're interpreting verbally. So when I'm going to court, I'm in a meeting, clients, when they're communicating verbally. So we're interpreting that verbal communication into either Lao or into English. So interpreting is different in a way that we interpret the meaning, the context from Lao into English, and is not verbatim, as opposed to translating document where a lot of time you do need to translate verbatim because it's in a written form. So in short, translation is translating written document, interpreting is, you know, interpreting verbal communication. And a lot of people misuse it, and they say, when I'm looking for a translator, I have to clarify, are you really looking for a translator or an interpreter? So you have to distinguish that. So people still misuse translation as interpreting.
Got it. I think I can relate it to, we talk about talking on a podium versus a lectern.
Yes.
And I think the correct terminology is a lectern, but we all say podium, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, maybe like a lot of people are just kind of using it interchangeably and maybe not even being corrected. So I think it's really, really great that you are making the true distinction between the two and the difference.
Right. And then, for example, if we actually translate a document, say we'll translate a metaphor or a saying or jargon or something like that, if we actually translate, it's gonna be pretty literal, right? But interpreting is that you really don't actually interpret verbatim, but you interpret the meaning of it. Like especially metaphor is it's going to be pretty funny if you're actually interpreting metaphor verbatim, word by word. It's not even going to make sense, because Lao people have a different way of saying things than English, even though the context or the meaning may be similar, right? So it gets quite fun at times.
No, absolutely. And I've been interpreting for my parents growing up as much as I can. And, I definitely see a lot of value, especially because they don't understand how to put it in words, and they don't know how to express it the way they want to. So that kind of leads to my next question. What is maybe like one of the biggest struggles you've had working as an interpreter, or maybe something that's a struggle in the industry as a whole? And then on the flip side, what is one of the most successful things that have come out of interpreting and translating?
Okay. Well, let me say this. For me, the most challenging for me was when I started out about 3-4 years ago. So most of us came here, when we were kids, teenager, and we grew up here. We've lived here for 40 years. And the Lao language that we use was pretty basic, right? The way we communicate with our parents. When I thought, well, I thought I was okay in my Lao, right? But when I became an interpreter, I found myself really inadequate. Let's say, people would probably say that my Lao was good before this, but when you actually compare it to what I needed, the proficiency level that I need in order to elevate my skill as a professional interpreter, that was the obstacle, because I didn't have a formal education of Lao language. So which means that I have to really get myself taught to learn. Well, let me just backtrack a little bit here. I have some formal Thai education, 6th grade level. So that actually helped me when I need to learn how to read and to write in Lao. Although even with the Thai language itself, I haven't used it for 30 something years. So I've lost it too. Not just spoken Thai language, also written Thai language too. And so the obstacle has been trying to elevate or trying to improve my Lao speaking and writing proficiency level. And I have to be honest, prior to becoming a registered Lao interpreter, I'd never quite pay attention to interpreter in court or in whatever setting. And sadly to say, I actually kind of didn't think highly of them. When I was a probation officer in court, I represented the probation department, and I would see interpreter coming in and kind of whisper into people's ear, and then they kind of just leave, right? And I didn't give them, seriously, I don't even pay attention to them. And I always thought that is like mom and pop, like, uncle, somebody in our community, someone who's older, who really don't have anything better to do, couldn't find any other job, that would end up being an interpreter. So it's pretty sad, but that was my perception towards interpreting in our community, until I became a registered court interpreter myself, when I realized this is not something just everybody can do. Not just anyone could become an interpreter. Because there are rules and there are ethics and there are ways of interpreting and translation that you must learn to consider yourself a certified or registered or professional or proficient language interpreter, right? And not just that, not only I had to improve my vocabularies, I have to improve the way I understand language. And think of it this way. Think of it this way. So if you're listening when you're interpreting, your brain has to constantly listen to the English, right, or to Lao, or a language, and your brain is constantly converting while you're listening, understanding. You have to almost simultaneously converting it to a Lao language, and then you got to spit it out, right? You got to spit it out almost at the same time. And the way to interpret, mostly we use simultaneous or consecutive mode. Simultaneous is when you translate, you would interpret pretty much sentence word by word, sentence by sentence. You would interpret right away, right? And then so if somebody's talking for an hour, you're interpreting right a long time with them. You don't have time to really think. You just have to convert words and spit it out right away. Right. But consecutive mode is when somebody speaks for about 3-4 sentences, they stop, and then you interpret into a source language. Now, it depends on the situation, which mode is necessary. In court, sometimes we do simultaneous, and sometimes we do consecutive. You just need to know which mode to use. And then so it becomes a challenge. And not all interpreters are proficient in both. Some are more comfortable doing simultaneous. Some are more comfortable doing consecutive. But our goal is to improve ourselves in both and be able to do both with ease in all settings. I do a lot of legal interpreting because I'm in court. I interpret for depositions and clientele conferences. Excuse me, I haven't done much. I've done some conferences. That is a different monster in itself when you're interpreting meetings, big meetings and whatnot. And so, and that was a challenge. And I'm still learning. I still, try to improve myself through listening to more Lao news, reading more new articles, try to speak in Lao language as much as possible. That was the reason why I started blogging video in Lao language, so that it's really more for me, so that I could force myself to use the Lao language, right on spot, to get better, right? And so that's the obstacle. And I think your part asking about what was the last part you asked me?
So basically, the successes, like what has come out of it in terms of maybe families or like something that's really big for you.
Okay, well, really big for me in terms of this. First of all, my Lao language has definitely improved by a grade. I would probably grade myself at a C, like minor C when I started out. Now I could probably say I'm at a B, solid B, or probably B plus grade. I'm nowhere near being an A yet. I would like to get myself to an A level, an A grade. But that's going to require another, I would say, 4 years, 5 years of me using more Lao, learning, and possibly exposing myself to more interpreting. And so that's a big plus. And second is that being a freelance interpreter. So I don't work for the court. I don't work for one organization. I freelance, which means that I will contract with all sorts of vendors, county, state, federal, immigration court. I went to Singapore, doing civil, criminal. So that allows me to make my own schedule, right? So I work around my kids. I work around my family. But it's also challenging too, because it means that I don't have consistent income. Some months is great, some months not so great, because that's the definition of freelancing. But the lifestyle, I love it, because the lifestyle I have right now, I don't have to work 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, and then I am able to sustain my living doing freelance. I might go out. I'm okay if I would just go out once a week, 3-4 times a week for interpreting, and I would be able to sustain my family and then have time for family. I can go on vacation. I don't need to ask for sick leave. You know what I mean? So right. It's pretty decent. So that two area, I completely love it. Right?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that's awesome. I mean, I would say this. I think that in our circle and community, you're definitely like an A+ interpreter translator. Anytime we talk or I ask about, a need for someone to interpret or translate something, your name is the first on the list. So
Oh,
definitely
well,
made a significant impact on the community. And, you know, that's probably one of the reasons why I really
yeah,
wanted to talk to you and have
yeah.
you on the channel.
Well, tell you what, Tony. So when when I grade myself, right? If I were to compare myself to our cohort, people in our age group, right? I would probably say I'm probably at the A if I were to compare to that. But I compare myself to those who are like who are in a doctorate degree, who are the true native Lao speaker from Laos, the
Yeah.
educator, the scholar of Laos, who are proficient. I grade myself compared to them. So that's why I still give myself a B, a B range right now, you know?
No, I respect that. And you know,
Yeah.
I do agree that, you know,
Mm.
it is sometimes who we compare ourselves to
Mm-hmm.
because we could be the best of the worst, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yes. Yes.
so
A
I
lot of room.
completely
A lot
understand.
of room to improve. That's correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's
And
great.
I want to add this, Tony. One thing, one of the I think challenge that I see in the interpreting field. First of all, obviously California has the most Laotian population living in the U.S., right?
Mhm.
And it's very hard to find a native Lao speaker, a native interpreter. Right now, at the moment, there are 13 or 14 Lao interpreter that is registered with the state of California, Judicial Court of California,
Okay.
which means that these are the only 13 or 14 individuals that are allowed or that can go into any court settings and interpret in the Lao language. Now, of those, I would say probably only 2 are actually native Lao. The rest are either Thai or Lao Isan. They're Thai, but they can speak Lao dialect, and or maybe Caucasian or other ethnic group like Hmong or Mien who can speak the Lao dialect as well. But those who are actually native Lao speaker are actually only 2. I'm one of them, and the other person is in San Diego, right? But obviously, all these 13 or 14 individuals have been tested, they've gone through written exam, oral exam, and they have there are standards. There are standards that we all have to meet in order to qualify to be registered as Lao interpreter. Right, but again, not all interpreters are the same, right? So just like any other field. And so for me, and this is what I see in interpreters. So those who are maybe interested or thinking about becoming an interpreter, I would encourage people to consider becoming an interpreter, because it's really hard to find interpreters now in our age group. And what I saw is that if there are people who are really good in Lao, but not so in English, and vice versa. And we have people that are very proficient in English because they grew up here, but the Lao language proficiency is not up to par. So to find one that have both Lao or Thai or English proficiency level that are up to par to standard, it's quite hard to find, right? So so a lot of time, like I give you example, I do trial, and there are people who can speak, let's say Lao, not so well, but that their English is fine. But and then so it's really hard to find that balance. And so for those who grew up here and want to become interpreter, I would wholeheartedly, send me a message. Definitely would talk to you. But there's a lot of self learning to do. But being able to learn our mother tongue, our language, and use it to sustain a living as a professional, I think that in itself is a big plus.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. And you covered some really, really important things. And I think a lot of people were curious, kind of like, the inner workings of considering being an interpreter or a translator, because they've probably been doing it. But this is not a cakewalk. It definitely takes a level of seriousness and professionalism. And I think that's why, so many people come to you, because you've done all that and more. So that's really, really wonderful. I want to kind of throw something at you that is pretty common. And I think I don't really know how this started, but why do you think, as an interpreter, maybe a translator, you might have better insight. Why do you think when most people learn a couple words in a new language, they usually learn the bad words?
Because I think because it's a natural reaction, right? Because it's easy to remember. Because bad words are something that we often use. And when we get into a certain mood, we use the word F this, F that, or whatever. And sometimes just being able to express that into a different language is easy to remember. It's easy to remember because we use it more than let's eat, let's go, or whatever, right? But the curse word is something that it's kind of sad we revert to, or that comes to mind most of the time, because we use curse word when we're happy, we use curse word with friends, we use curse word when we're sad and mad, and we just use it more often than any other typical words.
Yeah, and I believe, you know, a lot of us make it more comical when we use those words. I mean, yeah, so I can see that, but well, you know, maybe this is reserved for another channel because my channel is not really rated yet, but I mean, would you like to teach us a bad word?
Oh boy. Oh gosh. Interestingly, see, in court, we have to interpret all sorts of words. All sorts of words, be it bad words, be it nasty words, because whatever clients say, we have to interpret verbatim in court, right? And even if I myself wouldn't use that kind of word, wouldn't use profanity or won't, or certain word, you just don't say, because it's not just how you communicate. But as an interpreter, you don't get a choice. You have to say it just like they do. Let me give you an example. I cover a murder trial, where two inmates, an inmate killed his cellmate, right?
Oh my goodness.
And then his defense, when he took a stand, his defense was that his roommate tried to molest him, right? So, but the Lao word he said is that, I'm going to say it in Lao, okay? So you guys have, he said, no, he actually said it in, what did he say? He said, มันจะเอามือยัดใส่หูขี้ข่อย
Oh my goodness.
Okay. All right. So when I listen to something like that, then you're going to have to interpret, you know, he tried to stick his finger up my rectum, right? Or up my butthole, you know, things like that. You have to use the registry that is equivalent to how he really expressed it, right? I can't, if he said, เราสิเอานิ้วมือยัดใส่หูขี้ข่อย I can't just say, oh, he tried to touch my buttock, or he tried to touch my butt. You see that it has different feel, different meaning, how he conveys it, right? And so I have to interpret there, especially in the divorce cases, when people ด่าบักห่า บัก you know โคตรพ่อโคตรแม่ or something, excuse me, you said มันไปเล่นเบ้าให้เขาไปนอนให้เขา see you, but things like that, right? I have to interpret those kind of things into a language. And sometimes even if I myself I wouldn't never use that or speak like that, but in court we can't be embarrassed, we can't be shy. I have to put that facade, that face on, and interpret without giggling, without, you know, without making any kind of reaction, because we're not supposed to have any reaction, right? You have to maintain that level of professional. I mean I'll laugh, I laugh after I leave, but you know. So that's one thing, that so curse word or not, whatever word, and we have to understand language that are not even word. Like if you have an elder person that tells you, ค่อยเป็นมะล่องกองก้อย or เจ็บมุบมุบมับมับ or เฮ็ดมุบมุบมิบมิบ. See, those sound has meaning, but it's not necessarily a language. But you have to be able to know what that means, like เจ็บปับปับ เสียบจี๊ดจี๊ด, things like that, right? So you got to understand those to interpret correctly. And interpreting affects people's lives, Tony. So if you interpret, if not just a word, you know, if you interpret context incorrectly, it can change meaning, and it can change the way doctors treat client. It can change the way attorneys treat their client, and how the judge or the jury will make a decision in court. It does change the meaning in terms of context. So we can't take lightly interpreting. And I besides interpreting, I also do OPI testing, which OPI stands for Oral Proficiency Interview. So people who let's say, it could be any ethnicity, Caucasian, whatever. Let's say that they're going to go work in an embassy in the US, I mean in Laos or whatnot, and they have to take Lao language or Lao lesson. So what they'll do is that they'll have to call me, and have a conversation, have an interview with me, and I would grade them based on their Lao language usage, you know, whether they pass, they fail, at what level, right? And I get to see how people use the Lao language to express ourselves. And then for some that want to become interpreter for an agency, let's say to interpret for medical, they would send me a recording of this person speaking, answering question, and I would have to give them pass or fail, and whatnot. And then my encounter has been a lot of the new interpreter that are wanting to become interpreter in the clinic. I fail, I would say 95% of the people.
Oh, wow.
I will fail them. Because to me, if you cannot interpret one simple sentence like, what brings you here to the emergency room, right? Oh, very simple. If you can't interpret very basic thing, I'm not going to pass you because you're going to do more damage in that clinic interpreting than helping.
That's
so
really, really good.
Yeah, I'm kind of hard on people, I must say.
Well, I think you're at a different level of understanding as the whole and the type of impact it makes. You know, I've always learned that the little things make the biggest differences.
Yeah.
So I think that it's completely understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You know, going back to your story about, you know, translating or interpreting these words that are very specific, and no matter what they say, I don't know how I could hold myself in. Like I would out cracking up, and I could only imagine that maybe there's been a couple times where you had to like take a breather or step out.
Yeah. yes, I do. I have to take, and I think I'm still struggling with it. I still struggle. To me, interpreting. Let's see. I had a client that says something. I think child molestation cases are really hard. Really hard for me because it's filled with emotion. I mean, I just done a trial on let's say a sex offender registrant. He got charged again, you know, for so-called molesting a child. We had a trial 3 months ago, but it was a hung jury. They couldn't decide. So supposedly in June, we're going to have another trial. But that was very difficult because you see a child, you know, on stands speaking about very, very difficult things. And having to interpret that into Lao, there are some word use that are very difficult and highly emotionally charged. I do have to ask for break. I have to ask for break constantly, and just so that I could put myself in check and not form any kind of bias towards anyone, right? And then it's difficult. I mean, and as interpreter, believe it or not, we do have we do have vicarious trauma, because when you even in court, you interpret for cases that are murder and rape and sexual molest and domestic violence, all sorts of things that you hear. And Lao people, they love to tell story, right? They love. So I try to avoid people before and after court, because they have the tendency to come, you know, where were you from? Who's your parents? And they want to have that conversation with you. And when we're interpreter, we are not allowed to have that kind of contact before, after, whatsoever, because we have to be arbitrary, right? Just so not to have any bias. But that's very challenging for me, because if we don't talk to client, they think you're stuck up, and that's not allowed way, right? They think that you're not interested in getting to know them, talking to them, but we don't want to give out that impression either, right? And so it's a challenge. It's difficult. You know, I have to tell people all the time that I'm not allowed to give out numbers, because they do want to call to get advice, to get consultation, and that's something we cannot and should not, must not ever do as interpreter, right?
That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you going into that, because a lot of people don't realize, you know, what it takes and what you have to go through as an interpreter. Now that you said, I'm sure people appreciate what you do more. So, thank you. So as we start to wrap up, a couple more questions for you. What's kind of coming on the horizon? What's next for Maly?
Oh my gosh, you know, I'm one of those people where I'm never really satisfied in doing one thing or one place only. But as an interpreter, what I hope to do in the next 3 to 5 years is eventually working with the State Department. I would like to be able to interpret for diplomats. When president goes to some place, to Laos or whatnot, I would love to be able to be proficient enough to go there. I mean, people said, I'm ready, but I don't feel like I am, right? So, but hopefully that's something that I would do. And also, you know, in the horizon, it kind of scaling back my other hat as a community advocate. For me, two things that I want to see happen right now is to, you know, to help or to somehow look for ways to start our own Lao American TV station.
Oh, wow.
Some sort that is a place, a station where we can host all sorts of programs, be it entertainment, media, news, whatever that are catered to Lao Americans in all generations, be in Lao, in English, in whatnot, right? Because in 45 years we've been here, we don't have none. We don't have anything like that. People rely on Thai media, you know, obviously American media, but something that's catered towards Lao American. We don't have anything of that sort. Yeah, we have individuals, we have organizations that are releasing news and updates through social media, but I think kind of going back to traditional TV station where we can have different talk shows and programs and whatnot, right? That's something that I've been seriously thinking about. So if anyone who's interested, wanting to see it happen, you have the technical skills, you know, we're going to start putting groups together, people together, brainstorming. So that's coming. And, but long-term vision for me, I would love to be able to galvanize Lao diaspora, not just Lao American, but Lao diaspora globally, you know, to work together in a way that we can maintain the Lao heritage, to elevate it, to work together so that Lao people globally can be on the same page and support and help each other in all sorts of ways and all things Lao, basically. I mean, I know that, you know, even in the US, we haven't quite gotten to that yet, but long-term vision is I would love to be able to do something at a global level.
Absolutely. Wow. Those are great accomplished goals and accomplishments that you've had. And obviously
yeah,
you're dreaming really big. And I love that about you.
It's big. It's definitely big.
Go big or go home. Right?
Yeah, right.
So
Definitely.
no, I appreciate that. So, you know, as we wrap up, you know, how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about, you know, what you do as a registered interpreter, or if they just want to follow you as an amazing person, you know, what are the ways they can stay in contact with you?
Well, best way is through my public page. I have a Facebook page called Freelance Lao Interpreter, and it has a Lao language in there that says Nai Phasaมือใหม่, right? So I do a lot of blocking scandals and videos and stuff on there. So you can certainly, you know, go and follow and, you know, click like. I mean, you're not going to miss out on anything because I'm pretty active there. Personal page, I try to limit that. I don't allow people to follow me. And I try to limit people to, you know, people that I really communicate, because I do get pretty crazy. I do get really crazy on my personal page. And a lot of time, you know, it might not be suitable for certain individual. So I do select. I'm quite picky. I remove more people than add, actually. I try to remove more people to keep it very minimal. So the best page is my public page, the Freelance Lao Interpreter. And then follow me there, send me a message there. I'm more than happy to answer questions, especially those who think that interpreting may be something they want to do. It's great for people who want to do it, you know, as part-time job, supplemental income, people who want to learn, use it as a way to learn the Lao language, to write, to read. I know people have asked me to, you know, jump in and do workshops, you know, conversation Lao, or, you know, how to write Lao. And, you know, there's so much that I would like to do for people, and there are needs that people in the community have reached out to me. But like I say again, I'm just all by myself. It would be nice to have a team like Tony, for example, right?
Hey,
you know,
maybe one of these days.
Put this, you know, kind of stuff together, right? But yeah, I'm pretty quick with responding to people. Yeah, and calling on Facebook, you know, is a great way too. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, great. Thank you so much for everything you poured into us, all the great knowledge, information, insight, and I hope that, you know, people get to continue to learn about your industry, your field, but especially you as a person. So I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I never know. By then, I might have already gone back to law school and actually become defense, criminal attorney. Who knows, right? But
Yeah.
law school, it's still the one unfulfilled wish of mine, unfulfilled goal of mine to do. So I don't know if I'm ever going to go back for it, but who knows? It might happen.
Absolutely. Well, for all of you that are watching, I really want to thank you for joining us today with our special guest. And please comment, like, share, and subscribe, and we will do more of these. So thanks once again, Maly, and I hope to connect with you once we're out of this whole shelter in place. And
yes.
face-to-face.
Thank you for having this program. A lot of people is gonna be able to get to know. There's so many good people in our community. So I'm really glad for your program. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you so much. Have a great
one. You're welcome. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.